Okay, Jennifer, we're live. You're good to go.
Thank you, Megan. Good morning and welcome to the September DAC Monthly Webcast. I'm Jennifer Stafford, the Director in the Division of Assessment and Accountability Support. We thank you for joining us this morning for our updates on assessment and accountability in Kentucky. We appreciate the time that you are spending with us this morning. We realize that the opening and return of school this semester is an unusual one, and that much of your time and attention is pulled elsewhere. So we really appreciate you spending your time with us this morning. We've got several topics to cover today. Those include first, quality control days. If you've been a previous district assessment coordinator, you know that our quality control review period has been in the past only one specific day. This year, with the fact that we have such an unusual circumstance, there is going to be multiple days of review to give you more time and more opportunity to review data before it becomes publicly reported. The next topic we'll go into is the updates on the fall ACT assessment. This will be the last time that we speak with you about ACT before the fall administration, and we have some updates and reminders for you. A couple of weeks ago, we shared some mini modules as well as some virtual trainings and full-length trainings with our district assessment coordinators through a Monday email. And since that time, we've received many questions about the use of those and what's appropriate and what the department recommends. So the next item on the agenda will be to provide some more of that guidance and answer some of your questions. Afterwards, we'll talk about the bias review that happened this past summer and bring you up to date on those events, as well as share with you some upcoming scorable practice tests that I think that you're going to really appreciate and your teachers are going to be able to utilize. So after that, after all of those topics, we'll take your questions and answers. We've got a lot of information that is very important and timely for you, so we want to bring you up to date with all of that information. We'll answer questions at the end, so if you do have questions, please email dacinfo@education.ky.gov, and we'll get to as many of those questions that you have at the end of the broadcast. So with that, I'm going to ask Chris Williams, consultant in our division, if she would open her camera. We have this fall data reporting that we are preparing for in the school report card. It's going to look a bit different than it has in the past because we don't have state ratings in the school report card, but we will have information that will be publicly reported. So I'll turn it over to Chris to discuss those next steps that we need to take toward that public reporting.
Thank you, Jennifer. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the fall reporting, and we have talked about one step of the fall reporting, prior to this presentation with the data review process. And now we're going to move into the next part. Helen? We're going to talk about the need for our quality control review. Now, why do we do the quality control review? We do that to fix any big systemic issues that happen when you start looking at your data. And what you're going to do is we're going to talk about the steps of how are you going to be able to see that data and go through that in our presentation today. Next. So let's understand this process and let's see where we are at this point. We started out by getting the rosters right with our access rosters back in January through that March roster phase. And then where you could be able to make individual changes and, go through and, file any non-participations that you needed. And then, if anything else that you need to do for your students, if they had an IEP and needed accommodations, that you can mark those on those roster phase. Also, we had, during getting that rosters right, we had cohort rosters that were open from February 10th through July 31st, and they were open multiple times to allow you to look at your cohort data and be able to fix the issues in Infinite Campus, so that way each time we pulled and those were open, that you would be able to see when it was last updated and when it would be updated again. And then we went into the process of going into data review in August. And so we started that next step of, after our roster phase, moving into our data review phase of that cleanup in August. And we started that August the 7th. And it was originally to end on the 21st, but then we extended it to September 4th. And so last Friday was our last day to go in and make those individual student changes for both access and cohort. Also to identify your 100-day entity students, and then to request any non-participations that you had during that time. So now that phase is closed, and now we're moving to the next part of the process, which is our quality control day. Now, our quality control day, like I said on the previous slide, is for big systemic issues, for schools and districts to be able to identify those. It is not to make any individual changes. And then we will, once we complete this, then we will move into the moving that into public reporting in the school report card. Now, with this quality control, what you're going to do is it's going to open up, and it's going to open up. We're hoping that our scheduled time is the 16th through the 23rd of September. We are working on the data, and so it could possibly open a little bit sooner than than September the 16th. So be looking for that to come out, and information, detailed information to come out in the Monday DAC email. But let's go through what kind of steps we're going to see on this day, and what is that day going to look like. Because that day, like Jennifer said, is not going to be like our normal day for our QC, because usually we had just a day to do that. And usually we opened up with a presentation, and then you got into your work, and then we'd also have another presentation, after lunch. Well, our day is not going to look like that this time. So it's going to be, we're going to have a week-long review for this, and not just one day. And what you'll still be able to see your data, but we will not have any formal presentations during that day to walk you through things. We will have a special email that or be doing it in a Monday DAC email to give you more details on that day, and what your file names are going to be looking like for your access and your cohort data, graduation data. So let's talk about that particular part of the steps. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to, on that day, when it opens on the 16th, or if it opens a little bit before that, you're going to log into the KD Secure site, web application site, and with your username and password, and you're going to go to student data detail, and you're going to see your particular files, and you're going to see your aggregate data files as well as your student listings. And so we want to, you to just remember that with this data, that, if you do find any big systemic issues, that could change your data. So be careful with sharing this data out because of that reason. And we do want to make sure that the data is always secure. You never want to email any of that data out to anyone through email. But once you download it off of the secure site, then you're going to open up that data and review everything that we have put in there for you from Infinite Campus for your cohort data, and then also from the data review for access and alternate access, all the changes that you made during that time period during that data review. And then once you're reviewing, you're going to have all this time from this, definitely from the 16th through the 23rd. And then it will close on the 23rd for this particular process. And during this time, you want to look for those big systemic issues, not individual changes. And if you find any big systemic issues, you're going to put those on that particular discrepancy form. And we'll have a form for you to link to the Google form in the email that will link you to being able to record anything that you find with the big systemic issues for this particular process for quality control. Now, and then what happens if you find a discrepancy? Put it on the form. It'll be electronically, like I said, through the Google form. And then what you're going to do is that will be sent in, electronically once you enter the information in. Then it will go to our data side. And what they will do is they will go through and research what you have put in for those big systemic issues. They won't, please do not put any individual changes because this is not the time to be able to do that now. We did that during data review. Now, once they take a look at it and research it, then they will get back to you through an email with their responses. And, they do that very quickly, very efficiently, and they're very good to be working with you. So that is a different process than what we've done that in the past, but usually we've had also someone assigned to you on that particular day. So you won't have someone assigned to you particularly on that day. So if you have any questions about your data, you can call our office and talk to any one of us, and we'll be able to work through that. If you find any big systemic issues, you want to put that on the Google form and send that in electronically. And then, like I said, just want to kind of go through what the process for timeline for this process is that we just completed our data review process in SDRR, both with access, alternate access, and also with our cohort graduation rate data for 4-year and 5-year. Then we're going to move in now, like I said, to our quality control review day and then, review period from the 16th through the 23rd. And like I said, it may open a little bit before then if we get those files ready. And like I said, we'll be able to send that in an email with more detailed information about the spreadsheets and what those file names are going to be looking like. Also the link to the Google form, and then also to the KDE Secure site, so you can download those spreadsheets for you to look at your data for both access and alternate access and your data review. And also, like Jennifer said, there will also be a time where you'll also be looking at your school climate and safety data. And this next slide will also be showing you what that will be looking like. We will also be determined of after quality control, then we'll move into the media release and then get into the public release for you. And those dates will be determined at a later date and be sent out to you. So be looking for that in an email. Next. We also have, like I said, the school climate and safety survey. We back in the spring, we looked at the participation of the school climate and safety survey data, and also contacted different districts around that participation. And so now you're going to be able to see what that's going to look like. And you'll be able to see with this, it will be made available to schools and districts during this quality control review period. It will not be part of public reporting, and the reason why we're not going to be making it part of public reporting is due to the students who didn't participate in the alternate assessment. They were not able to participate in the survey, so we will not be releasing that publicly, but you will be getting your data. It'll be one of those parts of it that you'll download when you get your zip files on the KD Secure site. And what you're going to see with this, you're going to see your testing school code, your district name, school name, type, level, your demographic group, questions that were asked, the answers, the suppression, any enrollment, the tested, the participation rate, and the percentage of students who strongly agree, disagree, agree, and then strongly agree. So with this, we just want you to know that this will not be publicly reported, like the access and alternate access and the graduation data, which is your cohort data for 4-year and 5-year. But we did want to make that available to you, as well as your student listings for both alternate access, and your cohort listings. Those will be available to you in that zip file as well. So be looking for more details in the Monday DAC email or a special email to walk you through this particular process again and give you some little bit more details about those file names and the links to the secure site to be able to do your work and download those zip files for your schools and districts. And then also be able to see the Google form to link to if you have any big systemic issues during this quality control review. So I hope this helps with you learning about the next process and be looking for more information. Now this concludes this, and I'm going to turn it over to Shara, who's going to talk to you about ACT reminders and updates.
Thank
Shara?
you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. Next slide, please. We just wanted to come to you today and give you some updates and some reminders on the fall state administration of the ACT. And due to the unique circumstances that was brought about with the COVID-19 pandemic, ACT will now permit students to complete the non-test portion of their answer document on test day for this fall. Now, if you choose to do this, you will need to follow some guidelines. Examinees complete the non-test portion of their answer document before completing any other activity on test day. When they are finished, please instruct them to place taking the ACT booklet under their seats, and then the students will take those home with them once testing is complete. Then the room supervisor should proceed with testing. And please adhere to all scheduled breaks and documented in the test administration manual. And lastly, if this is a decision that you make, you will need to submit an irregularity report. But please ensure that the school's entire testing population adheres to the same non-test decision, whatever you decide. If you decide to bring them in, on Monday and do all this and then test on Tuesday, that's fine. Just make sure it's a consistent decision, whichever path you decide to go. And schools should not use the non-test activities information from the spring administration. That's really important. I use the papers with the current shipping materials. Don't use anything from the spring. And on test day, please ensure that all the current COVID-19 guidance procedures are followed. And with that, we know that students are going to be required to wear a mask all day. You do not have to file an irregularity report for that COVID-19 guidance. So on that, you do not have to file an irregularity report. Next slide, Helen, please. So now let's take a look at ACT required training for room supervisors, proctors, and accommodations providers. All ACT testing staff, both new and experienced, must be trained and this training session needs to be conducted by the test coordinator before test day. So near the end of the ACT Test Administration Manuals is a section called Training Sessions Outlined and Topics for Discussions. Subjects that are included are the security of test materials, room preparation, pre-test activities, test day, and after the test. During a training session, the test coordinator is expected to discuss the topics described in each section with the testing staff. The test accommodations coordinator must also attend and share any issues with accommodations staff in a separate training session. And so on the slide here, you'll see the resources that are available. So please be sure to review each one of those. And then in addition to ACT's training's expectation, all testing staff must be trained in the administration code for Kentucky's Educational Assessment Program. And then for those providing accommodations, the inclusions of special populations training is required as well. Next slide, Helen. And here are some important key dates that are coming up pretty quickly that I wanted to remind you about. So the first one is the ACT accommodations reconsideration deadline. That is next Friday, September the 18th. ACT will consider requests for ACT authorized accommodations and EL learner supports that were not initially approved. If you would like ACT to review a request, you may use the TAA system, the Test Accessibility and Accommodation System, to submit additional documentation. And just remember that deadline is Friday, September the 18th. ACT additional order materials deadline is also coming up. So if you need additional standard time testing materials needed for the 9/22 test date, the deadline to order those materials is this Friday, September the 11th. And directions for ordering the supplemental materials can be found under the order materials section in the PAN user guide. And then we also have ACT non-college reportable accommodations material deadline coming up. The school test coordinator authorizes non-college reportable accommodations test materials as appropriate for examinees. These are not requested through the TAA system. The test coordinator is responsible for ordering non-college reportable accommodations test materials in Pearson Access Next for each examinee who needs them. And the deadline to order these materials is this Friday, September the 11th. And again, the directions for ordering those materials is under the order materials section of the PAN user guide. And then lastly, the last reminder that I want to share with you is your testing materials should, if you are testing on 9/22, your testing materials should be being received this week. And if your testing occurs on 9/22, standard time and accommodation materials, they will be here by Friday, the September the 11th. And test coordinators are required to check in the materials within 24 hours of receiving them from ACT, and contact ACT immediately if the contents do not match your packing list, or if there's evidence of the shipment being tampered with. And materials, remember, very important, materials must be kept in a secure storage at all times before, during, and after testing. The test coordinator is responsible for the security of all test materials from the time of the receipt. And at this time, that's all of the ACT updates and reminders that I have. And I believe Kevin O'Hare is up next to give you some information on the administration code and inclusions of special populations.
So thanks, Shara. I appreciate that, and I do want to share with everyone that before we get started, as Jennifer noted earlier, that we have the we released the administration code and inclusions of special populations training last Monday on August 31st. And that was an updated training that basically reflected changes to the actual training itself, the formatting. However, no information that was provided throughout the regulation changed, just the training format and the layout itself. So we also were able to provide the training modules that broke down specific sections of that training. And hopefully allowed a little bit of, or shared a little bit of variance with schools and districts and a little bit of flexibility. Now, as we've all, or several of us have been involved with these trainings over the years, this is the KDE version. This is the information that we're providing out. I know some districts in the past have worked to supplement their own approach to the training, and we do require the administration code training for all participants involved in statewide assessments. And then, of course, as Shara noted just a couple of slides ago, we also ask that anyone providing accommodations have the administration code as well as the inclusion of special populations. But the reason that we are discussing today is the guidance around these new trainings. And so what we wanted to make sure is that we shared out the information just as far as what we recommend with these new trainings, and how that we recommend that they be shared out at the local level, and in some situations through the state. And so if we can move on to slide 14, Helen. So the first thing that I would like to share with you before we get into the actual recommendations versus the requirement here is I kind of want to focus on what we mean by different components within the training. So we elaborate on face-to-face in this document, and we talk about face-to-face full training, meaning the fully developed training that we released on August 31st that shared the entire training as a whole, the video, the checks for understanding with explanations to those questions. That's what we consider as the full training. Excuse me. The face-to-face component of it focuses more so on how the training is going to be received. So I know that face-to-face typically sounds like you have to be there in person. But with the current situation that we're encountering right now, and how that we have been able to provide trainings at a different level, we did want to share with you that face-to-face must comply with all health and safety protocols. And so when that training is scheduled, the face-to-face may not necessarily be that someone is there in attendance. That may be like what we're sharing right now, a remote training, where that you're still able to see the presenter, you're still able to interact and engage with the presenter, and that they receive that full-scale training. So face-to-face training is going to be one that can be held, if possible, as long as health and safety guidelines are followed face-to-face as a group. However, if that's not an option, we do want to note that face-to-face could also be through a remote setting. If you do that through Google Meets, through Teams, through Skype, whatever that platform might be. The next thing we want to talk about is the virtual training modules. And so the virtual training modules are those modules that we broke down specifically to identify certain aspects of the training. So in that sense, you may have a situation where that independently teachers are going to go in and review those modules and complete the training, and then you may have a system set up at the district level, a learning management system that allows them to go in and complete the required checks for understanding or quizzes that go along with those. So that kind of gives you an idea of how the components are engaged with this document. What we want to do now is look at the recommendations first and talk just a minute about what we as a department recommend in this scenario. So for a new test administrator and those that have limited experience with the testing practice, and what we have identified here is 2 years or less, we would recommend that they complete a face-to-face full training. And that means with the check for understanding at the school or district level. Now, that does not mean that, as we noted earlier, that it has to be actually in person. We do mean that it could occur remotely as well. But for those that are maybe new to the assessment practice, we do ask that we do recommend that they receive a full-scale training. For those that we might consider our veterans, are ones that have multiple years of experience, and by that we have said 3 years or more, then we're recommending that they could have the virtual training modules if the district chose. Chose for them to do so. That doesn't mean that they couldn't have the full-scale training face-to-face or remotely, but that they also would entertain the option of completing the virtual training modules. Now, that's a district decision. That's going to be a local decision. So, Helen, if you want to move on over to the next slide. All right. So the next part is a little bit different in the sense that when we talk about the administration code trainings, we also, one of the things that often comes to mind is allegations, okay, and also the process that's involved there. So the first thing that we want to note here is the difference between an allegation pending and an allegation confirmed. So, of course, an allegation pending may mean that the process is underway, the investigation is underway, but there has been no resolvement. There has been no recommendation. There has been no findings, anything that's shared out in that nature. So, in that sense, sometimes we may not know exactly if the allegation is in fact an allegation yet when it's pending. So that may occur, or state testing may occur before any resolvement is made. And so in that sense, if you're preparing for upcoming state assessments, whether it be in the fall or in the spring, we do recommend that if someone has an allegation pending, that they receive the full training, at the school or district level, and that can be face-to-face or remotely. Like I said, that's a district decision, but we do recommend that someone who might have an allegation pending would continue that or would complete the training at the district level in either a face-to-face or remote setting, but it'd be the full-scale training. Now, for those that have an allegation confirmed, that situation, of course, typically recommends additional training, and many times that is training that is conducted by the department. So what we're stating here is that it needs to be a face-to-face training provided by the department. So if that allegation has been confirmed, then that's going to be the full-scale training that we developed and we provided out on August 31st, as well as, it may not be face-to-face, it may be remote in the same scenario that we're conducting this meeting right now, but it would be the full-scale KDE training for anyone that had that allegation confirmed. So this is just some information that we were very, very excited to share out, and and hopefully this provides a little bit of guidance around the training that went out last week, and it gives maybe it answers some of those questions that many had in regards to the training and those required fulfillments. So at this time, I am going to turn it over to Helen, and I think she is going to share a little bit of information around the bias training that occurred this summer. So Helen, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kevin. Good morning, everyone. As we move forward towards our spring operational state assessment of our current standards, we must ensure that our items are free of bias, meaning that the items have been considered for sensitivity and does not give unfair advantage to one group of students or subgroup over another. So when we talk about bias, it's critical to review our test items, and the Center for National Research Council says that fairness and sensitivity cannot be properly addressed as an afterthought. It must be confronted throughout the interconnected phases of the testing process, from test design and development to administration, scoring, and preparation. So this basically says we can't wait until after we have basically administered a test and then discovered that there may be some insensitivity that were part of that exam or gave unfair advantages to other students. During the summer, we actually conducted a bias review. We had over 44 individuals to complete a review of the items that will be used in the operational assessments for reading, mathematics, editing mechanics, and the editing mechanics test item. We had representatives from all over the state of Kentucky to participate in the bias review. The individuals that participated were made up of parents. We had special ed teachers, special ed parents, parents of students with disabilities. We had district personnel. We had representatives from our higher ed. We had business leaders. We had community leaders. We had representatives from our EL population, which included teachers and parents, as well as district representatives from the EL population. We had minority representation. We had individuals that were part of the visual impairment specialists. This was a very successful process, and we feel very confident as we move forward towards the operational assessment. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Jennifer to talk a little bit about some of the continued processes involved in going forward with Scorable practice tests. So Jennifer?
Thank you, Helen, and thank you to Chris and Shara and Kevin and yourself for all of the wonderful updates and reminders of upcoming activities. You can see that we're quite busy here preparing for either our operational assessments or our field test. One piece that we're very excited about is a new option or a new opportunity that Pearson has helped develop for the K-Prep assessments for the upcoming school year. So Helen, if you will click to the next slide. For the K-Prep assessments, we are offering a Scorable practice test. Now, these practice tests, you've seen the practice test in the past. They have been through either a secure web portal or they've been through a URL online, and students were able to take those practice tests. Practice tests are used for multiple purposes. First, that they are used instructionally. Teachers can view those practice test items. They can get a sense of what the items look like, how they are presented, whether it's multiple choice, multiple select, technology enhanced items, or short answer and extended response, and even our on-demand writing. Practice tests have been presented. So we've got the opportunity coming forward for those students to continue to utilize those practice tests. For the students, the practice tests help them also to understand those items and what they're going to look like when they get to the real test. They practice the items, they can practice the technology so that they can learn how the application, they can familiarize themselves with the functionality of the TestNav platform. Moving forward, and these are going to be offered very soon. We're hoping those will be out sometime in the October-November timeframe for our Scorable practice test. Those will be able to be utilized with the students. Again, those can either be done securely, or you can share those through a URL, and the students can get to them even if they are remote learning. Those practice tests will be able to be used by the students as well as the teachers to help prepare for those online assessments in each of the content areas. So the assessments will be scored within the multiple choice, multiple select, as well as the technology enhanced items. So the student will proceed through the items that are presented in any of the content areas, and they will answer the items. If it's a short answer, they will type their short answer in. If it's on-demand writing, they'll type their answer in. Once they get to the end of the practice test, then they'll be able to have the opportunity to review, to go back and look at their bookmarked answers and so forth that they would be able to do in a regular assessment. But for the Scorable practice test, then when they click Submit Answers, then the very next screen that they will get is an immediate feedback on if they've answered the items correctly or not. So it will be presented all of the items within the points that were awarded are available and that were awarded to that student for that practice test. So for example, in one practice test, there may be 14 items that are either multiple choice, multiple select, or TEI, and the screen, that final screen after the submission, would give the number they got right out of the 14 questions. If the student answered the short answer or the on extended response or the on demand, then the student's response will be presented below their scores for those items. The teacher can then take that answer from the student, look back at the question, and then be able to score that item or provide some input instructionally to the student on that item. So again, these practice tests will be available very soon. They will be scorable. They will be able to be utilized both instructionally and as in preparation for the operational assessments. Those scorable items will be automatically, it will be instantaneous once the student clicks the submit answers. Then those short answers or extended responses that needs to be scored using a rubric, then the teachers would be able to look at those and score those. If the student, for example, got one wrong, then you can see the number, which question that they got wrong, and actually go back into a new assessment, look at the question, and see what how the student answered it and what the issue was or the misunderstanding was. So these are going to be very useful, and we want to present these to you, and we're very excited to be able to offer these scorable practice tests. So with that, Pam, that is the last topic that we wanted to present. I know that we have questions, so I'm going to ask you to present those, and then I would say we have questions on the fall quality control days as well as ACT. So I'm going to close my camera and allow or ask Shara and Chris to open theirs.
Yes, we've had quite a few questions come in. And we are going to start with Chris's questions first. So let's go look at these. And this thing is doing some strange things to me, so hang on just a second, folks.
You're
Turning on
fine,
the camera
Tim.
really did weird things to Teams here. So let's just start, Chris. Is there a quality control review non-disclosure form available that they should be filling out?
There will be, and that will be part of the communication that will go out. So they'll have the link to the Google form that will be in the email. They'll have the link to the KDE Secure site. They'll know what the file names are, and then also any embargo, any non-disclosure forms that they'll need. Excuse me.
Okay. And Chris, is any of this data embargoed?
Well, we're not using the term embargoed. It is, we're keeping these items are secure, and they're supposed to, as well as any of our, student level data, you always want to keep it secure until public reporting. So.
Okay. That's all the questions I have for you right now, Chris. So we're going to move on to Shara.
Okay. Thank you, Pam.
Mm-hmm. Shara, we've got some confusion from several people have written in about their ordering deadline, additional materials. When will they receive things if they're doing the October date and not the September date?
Okay, yes, the dates that I went over earlier were deadlines for the 9/22 date. So if you are testing on 10/6, then you will order your standard time materials from 9/22 to 9/25, and you will receive your materials the week of October the 2nd. That's if you're testing on 10/6. And if you have chosen you needed to choose the 10/20 date, then look for those in the Monday DAC email for those dates.
Okay. And that concludes all the ACT questions we have so far.
Okay.
Now we have some questions for Kevin.
All right.
Okay, Kevin, if an allegation is confirmed, is the face-to-face with KDE mandatory or recommended? And will this begin with this year's 2021 potential allegations or the ones from last year, 2019, 2020, if any?
So I think the intention behind the documentation that we shared out was that if it is a confirmed allegation, that it be a conducted KDE training, whether that be face to face or through the remote setting, but it would be a full scale training that one of our staff would conduct. As far as the time frame for when that application occurs, whether it be for future allegations or prior allegations, I'm not 100% specific or sure about that, but we can definitely reach out to the Office of Legal Services and see how they would want to entertain that question.
Okay, and we have someone else is asking you to clarify a little bit. That anyone who has a confirmed allegation will need to drive to Frankfurt for the training and can no longer do it locally. They were a little confused on someone that has a confirmed allegation.
So, Kevin, I can help with that clarification. So, as it has been in the past, the school or district can provide the training. What I believe what Kevin's trying to say is that the KDE full-length materials for that training must be utilized.
Yes, that version. Yeah. My apologies. That was a little unclear.
Okay, and we have a couple of questions for Jennifer. Jennifer, assuming that we will have state testing in the spring, will those assessments be online as planned?
At this point, we are working with our vendors, Pearson, to provide all of the assessments online. Those, again, have the TestNav system available. We're really working toward and preparing for the administration of the state test online as we had planned. So until we have otherwise directions, then we will continue to march forward with the administration of spring assessments as planned.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. We've had a couple more questions come in. Will teachers be able to generate group reports on those practice tests or only by student?
So that is an individual student. So the individual student gets that. It's not going to be aggregated in any way. And the teacher or the student would have to actually capture that or print it out in some way. It's not going to be saved in any aspect where it can be filtered or that. So at this point, it's individual students and it's immediate feedback. Then once that screen goes away, that data goes away. So if the teacher wants to use it, it would need to be captured either with screenshots, written down, or by printing the score report out.
Okay, we've had a couple more questions come in for you, Jennifer. Lots of curiosity here. Will there be technology enhanced items on the spring K-Prep, or do we know yet?
The technology enhanced items are included within the practice test, and there will be some of those represented in the practice test. So those are, yes, planned to be part of the operational assessments.
Okay, and I think I've just got I've got another one for Jennifer, and then we'll go back to Shara real quick. Is there any update on the social studies field test?
As you know, it was scheduled to begin next Monday. It was scheduled for September 14th through 18th. We had to postpone that because of the current pandemic, noting that the majority of our schools and districts are not in person right now. And so they are, we were not able to get the representation of all of our student demographic groups that are needed to provide a quality field test. With that, we at the department are monitoring and continuing to engage in conversations with both our local districts as well as our vendor for options. We're monitoring the developments of the return to school. So there, as the pandemic unfolds and as we understand how our school districts handle this next phase after the governor's recommendation of closing to in-person after the September date, then we'll know more.
Okay, and we have another quick question for Shara. Just to clarify, if we're going to administer the ACT on October the 20th, will we receive the test materials in the same time frame as the October 6th test date, since we had to choose the October 6th as the test date on the ACT site?
No, that will occur later. It was just due to that's an emergency date, and it wasn't built into the system. So for that October 20th date, be on the lookout in the Monday DAC emails. As time approaches, I will deliver information through the Monday DAC email for those testing on 10/20.
Thank you, Shara. Jennifer, we have one last question. When will the practice test be available for everyone to use?
We are excited to present those. We are targeting October timeframe to release those. We are working with Pearson right now in the final stages of those Scorable practice tests. So look for those very soon.
And those are all the questions we have.
Well, wonderful. And again, we really appreciate everyone's time and attention here with our district assessment coordinators, our monthly DAC webcast. We wish you all the best. If you think of questions that you want to ask that we're not able to ask at this time, if it occurs to you later, please reach out to dacinfo@education.ky.gov or any of us, and we will get back with you. Until we see you in October, we wish you the best. Please stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.